Hello there, my name's Jan from JB Crafts and thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel today. As you can see from the design, we're actually going ready for Easter today. Now, if you've been following my channel, the last two projects were quite in depth, and I know one or two of you have had a go at them, that you've actually sent me photos and they are looking amazing. So I'm really glad that you're enjoying the content. But I have gone a little bit more simple in style today. I just wanted something a little bit more straightforward, and it's going to be the beginning of possibly another collection of videos that is entitled Something Old and Something New. So what I've done is I've actually pulled out a very, very old die from my stash, which is what's made the background, and I'll show you the products in a second, and teamed it up with a reasonably new product from, they're both from Crafter's Companion. So yeah, that's where we're heading with it today. So we'll get into the tutorial and I'll show you what I've used in order to put the card together. So I've just popped a little greeting inside there, and this is a standard 7 by 5 inch design open fold today. So products that I've used, the new products, there's something new, was actually products that Crafter's Companion brought out for their Easter collection this year, which is just last month that these came out. So I've got the Springtime Scene, which has got a gorgeous metal embellishment die in, along with the two little bunnies. So if I show you the metal in that one, you can see here. And the outside piece is separate, which is what I'm going to be using today, along with the two little bunny dies in that one. And I'm going to join that with the Easter Blessings, the sentiment set that came out with that same collection. So those are my new products. And then the Something Old, I've had this a very, very long time, and I love this background. This is from an old signature collection by Sarah Davies, and it was the Shabby Chic collection, which has been out a very long time now. Unfortunately no longer available, but some of you may have either this particular die or something very, very similar in your stash, and I just wanted something that was got some detail in it to create a background effect within that aperture. So we're going to use the outline to cut the aperture in the card, and you can see this is what's created that lovely lattice work in the background. So I'm going to die cut this one for you today, and we're going to die cut it out of some smooth glitter card as well, non-shed glitter card. So let me bring some pieces in that we're going to use for the design. Then I'll pop that one, whoops, over there out of the way. And we're actually going to start off, like I said, with a basic 7 by 5. Now I've made this myself, so I just cut my piece of card 10 inches by 5 inches tall, and I've scored it straight down the centre at 5 inches, sorry, 7 inches tall, yeah, and I've scored it at 5. Folded it across. We'll just reinforce that little fold with my bone folder there, and that's going to be our card base. And then I've gone down in sort of increments for the next bit. So I've gone down with my piece of lovely, this is actually ivory glitter card from Crafter's Companion, and it's one of my favourite colours. It's such a beautiful sort of almost like a champagne colour. And I've gone down to 6.5 by 4.5 for this one. So I've just come down 1/2 inch on each dimension, which has given me that nice 1/4 inch border. So that's going to be the one that we're going to die cut into with that background die. And I will have to pop off camera for just a second while I do the die cutting, because my die cutting machine's behind me. So we're going to pop this one on here with a little bit of tape. And it's not quite the right dimensions, but we're going to put a layer over the top of this. So I just wanted the lattice work in the background. So we'll take the card out of the equation for a second, and then I'm just going to roughly centre this in the middle there, tape it down, and then I'm going to pass this through I've got my Gemini machine is actually set up behind me. So what I'm going to bring in is my base plate. I'm going to put the metal shim, because this is quite a detailed die and I'm cutting through glitter card, which is a coated cardstock. I'm actually going to pop it onto my metal shim in there. And then I've got the rest of my plates, and forgive me, I still use my original purple plate on my Gemini, which I absolutely love. So yeah, I will just be back in a second. My videos aren't edited, so there will just be a break where I'm passing that through my machine behind me, and then I will be back with you guys. So when we bring this back into play now, if we remove those pieces here, we've got that die cut beautifully into that section there, and then we can get rid of all the plates, and we can release this very, very carefully from the back of the die there. I'm just going to lift it off. You can hear it releasing from the die, and the majority of the pieces, just one little piece there escaped, but the majority of them have stayed in the die, and I can clean that out. I will clean that with my die brush later on when I finish the video. So we'll pop that to one side. And you can see now that we've got that beautiful lattice piece there. If I bring it back over the card blank, you can see the detail there. There's a couple of little pieces clinging in, so we'll just get rid of those. We wouldn't have seen those anyway, but you know my OCD wouldn't allow me to leave them in there even if I wasn't seeing them. So this is going to go over the top of the card blank. And then I've brought in a piece that is 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So I've come down just 1/4 of an inch this time, just to stagger those borders. So you can see the outside one was 1/4 of an inch. The gold border showing is just 1/8 of an inch. So I've just got them slightly staggered. And what I've done is I've used the outside cutting edge, because this part cuts into your design. So I wanted the outside to create an aperture. And I've actually cut that into the front of my card, just to save me leaving you guys twice. I've already cut this one on the machine. And if we just take that out of the center now, you can see there we've got, and you can see what I meant now about this one covering and just showing that lattice work. Now I've realized I've written my dimensions here underneath, which you can see. So all I'm going to do is just flip the card over so that we can work on that side. It doesn't matter that the dimensions are on the reverse of it. So that's what's cut out, you can see there. Okay, so then I had to play around with what kind of embellishments I wanted to use for this, and I came up with, I love stamping on vellum. So what I did was chose my sentiment, and I went for, let's just have a little look on there. I went for the Happy Easter and God Bless. So I'm going to take this one out of here. I'll bring my stamp platform in a second. And what I wanted to do was create a piece of vellum to go across the design. Now I had to play around with it and decide. Initially I was going for straight across the top, but then thought actually it looked quite nice trapped behind the aperture at the front there. So we're going to stamp first, and then I'm going to tear the edges, because even though we've got quite a, sort of a classic looking design, I do like the torn edges on the vellum where it exposes that little tiny bit of white edge. So let's do the stamping first. We'll pop these pieces to one side. I'm going to bring in my stamping platform here. And when I'm stamping on vellum, I tend to use my StazOn ink. I find that this is a really good one. It stamps onto the vellum. It will stamp onto acetate and things like that. Anything that doesn't have a porous surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring these pieces in so that I can see where I need my stamp. So I'm going to put this one in the bottom, lay the vellum roughly where I want it inside, and then I can position my stamp, and I want it over to the left hand side. If I bring this one in again for you, you can see I've got this to the left so that I've got my embellishment detail on that right hand corner. So yeah, just so that I can position roughly where I want that to be, and I'm going to try and get it in the center so that I've got room to tear each edge when it's finished. And then what I will do is carefully remove those pieces so that my sentiment is in the correct place there. And then I can pick it up with the door. I'm going to bring in my Stays On ink there. Just take the top off that one and give this a little ink up here. And I do like to coat it well, because with the vellum I do prefer to just stamp the once, even though it's in my stamp platform. It's a very, very delicate medium, the vellum, so to try over stamping, sometimes I end up with sort of a halo. So if I bring in my little stamp press tool, just give that, I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to distort the text there, but just let that ink transfer onto the vellum, and hopefully if I use my bone folder to just make sure that it doesn't move there, we've got that sentiment. That's fine, I'm quite happy with that. So we'll put the ink pad away, and then I'm just going to leave that to dry for a second to make sure that it is perfectly dry before I start playing around with the piece of vellum. So I'll come back to that one in a second. So I think what I'll do while that is drying is, let's have a think. We'll do a little bit of extra die cutting, I think, because I want to do the embellishments to go on the bottom. So if I bring that die set back in, there are two gorgeous little silhouette bunnies on there, and we're going to cut those out of one of my favourite cardstocks again, which is the gold matte mirror card. So I'm going to bring in my Gemini Mini. And please excuse my little folder because it is well loved. I use this tons and tons, but it still works. It's got a lot of scarring on it, but it does still work. And I'm going to bring in a piece of that lovely gold matte mirror card. All right, so we'll pop our little die cuts onto there. Just grab a piece of tape from the side of here. And we're just going to cut a couple of those out in that gold, and I'm going to pass those straight through my little mini there. Just make sure that we've got a little bit of pressure on the top, and that should cut those out absolutely fine. So pop that down there for a second, open that up, and then we've got those little embellishments good to go. So you can see one there and one there. Now what I've actually done in my little box of tricks again, I've cut them a couple of times out of some of the scrap cream card, just to stack them, to give them a little bit of depth. Now you can do this with foam pads, but I actually prefer to stack the die cut, so I'm actually going to use this as a top layer and stick these onto the top here, and you can see then that there's a little bit of dimension in them just by building up the cardstock layers. And I do this quite a lot with my die cuts. I like doing it with sentiments and things like that. So just a little bit of wet glue, and we're going to pop that on that cream layer. And this was just scrap card that was left over from when I cut out the card blank and things like that. And then just because it's going on to a shiny card, I'm going to make sure that that glue is smooth, whoops, so that it doesn't show through the mirror card there. And then we'll just sit him on top. And because the die cut, you've got that perfect fit there. So we've got that one. And then I just usually use my block just to keep them nice and flat while that glue is adhering properly. And again, we do the same. And they're just really cute, these. They're just the right size for a nice little embellishment there. So again, we're going to do the same. And I'm just going to smooth that out again with my fingers so that there aren't any sort of bumpy bits that are likely to show through that shiny surface. And then sit this one on top, like so. Make sure that that's all lined up. And then I'm just going to leave both of those under my block for a second to let that glue adhere. So the next thing that we're going to do is come back to that greeting. So I'm going to bring my vellum back in now. This should be dry by now. And what I want to do is come from one edge and just tear along. And I'm not trying to be straight with it. I deliberately sort of try and go in a a bit of a wavy line. I just like that it exposes that white edge on the vellum. So that's the first piece. And then I'm going to turn it the opposite way so that I'm constantly tearing towards myself, which is what exposes that edge. And then just come along the bottom edge the same. And I'm going to go all the way across. We're going to wrap this around that layer before we stick it onto our card base. So yeah, take away that one. And you can see now, I don't quite like that little bit that went there, a bit bumpy there. So we'll just go back in there and tweak that bit there. And then if I bring the card blank back in, we'll move the little bunnies over there for a second. Bring the card back in. What I want to do with this is actually trap it underneath like so. And then we're going to wrap it around the glitter card before we assemble the rest of the design. Now again, when I got this far, I thought there was quite a lot of interference from the background I felt that was interfering with the sentiment. So I thought, right, where are we going to go from there, Jan? So again, just a piece of scrap card that was lying around on my desk. I'd been using this for something else, and this is just a piece of wood grain card. And what I've done is I've made this just the right size to fit underneath the vellum. So we're going to put this layer down first, lay the vellum over the top, and then adhere the aperture. So that way we've got a much more solid surface for that sentiment to sit on. The background's no longer interfering with it, and it also almost, I think it looks like a band around the egg. So let's start assembling some of this now then. So again, I'm going to pop this in for placement. So we're going to stick this one down first with a little bit of wet glue. Because I'm sticking onto my glitter card, I tend to use the wet glue so that it can seep into that coating. So I'm just going to put a little bit on each side here so that I can position this and it will stick to the side of my piece. So again, I just want to check with this one roughly where I want it to go, remove the aperture, and then stick that one onto the side. So just hold that for a second until that glue grabs. And then we're going to overlay the vellum. And these are very similar in width. I've ended up here with, let me just have a little look, the scrap piece is about 1¼ inches in height there, in height, and then I've just done it slightly narrower than the piece of glitter card. This one, by the time I've ripped it, is just a wee bit. It's about 1 1/8 of an inch. So there's a little tiny bit of the extra edge, the torn edge showing, which I quite like there. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to bring that aperture piece in just to make sure that my sentiment's in the right place. So I don't want it to disappear under this edge. So I'm quite happy with where that's positioned there. So hold that one in place. Remove the aperture for a second, and what we're going to do is wrap this right around that piece here, and the same at this side. So what I want to do then is I'll bring in my tape runner, my double-sided tape here, just to secure this on the back, like so. And then that wraparound should hide behind the piece of scrap paper. But if you're not particularly bothered about that bit, I'm just going to snip away the excess of that vellum so that it doesn't get in the way there. So we've got our piece good to go. So now that I've done that part of it, I can actually stick this one down onto my card blank. So again, I'm going to stay with that tape runner for the time being. Turn it over and just run the double-sided tape round the edge of that frame that we've created when we cut out the border die there. Okay. And then I wouldn't normally do this on the back of a die cut, but because it's behind the scrap piece, I'm going to just stretch a piece of that double-sided tape across there as well. And then we'll get our card blank at the ready. Make sure it's opening the right way. And then I'm just going to centre this in the middle of my card blank. So we've got that nice equal border pretty much all the way around there. Give it a good press down, make sure that's secure. Now then the next question was, do I actually raise this one up? So you could put this on foam if you wanted to, but I decided, because we were going down that nice classic, almost clean look, that I would keep it flat. Now again, because I'm going to stick onto the glitter card, I'm going to bring my wet glue back in. Because the wet glue soaks into the glitter surface, you're going to get a better kind of adhesion with the glue than using the dry tape or the tape runner. So I'm just going to run a line of glue round the edge first, like so. And then I'm going to go around the inside of that aperture as well to make sure that the whole thing is nice and secure when we place this on the card. Fill in the bits there, and then this one is going to lay now over the top. So again, there's about 1/8 of an inch on this one. So just get that centered nicely. Give it a good press down. And then when I'm happy with the positioning in that, I'm actually just going to bring my block again and pop that on the top. So something, you know, if you don't have a block, you could use a book or something like that, just to add a little bit of pressure to it so that that glue grabs nicely and you've got that in position. So all we need to do now then is we're going to embellish and we're going to add the inside. So for the inside of the card, I've just cut a piece the same size as the glitter card. So this was actually the 6.5 by 4.5, and I've used another stamp from that lovely set there. So I've gone for where did we end up? Hope, this one. Hope your Easter is extra bright and happy this year. And I've stamped that out on the inside there, and then I've just been round the edge of it with my antique linen ink. Because this was a piece of white card, I just wanted to distress it slightly because the card blank is made from ivory. You can just see the difference in the two pieces there. But on the inside, I don't think that really matters. So you've got somewhere to write your message. So we'll pop that one in while it's all nice and flat. Again, using that tape runner, just making sure that I break that adhesion when I get to the edge. So nice and gently, a little bit of a flick when you get to the edge, and we're good to go with that one. So again, I'm just going to centre this inside so that I've got a space to write my message, like so. Give that a press down. And then on the front, I'd actually got my two little bunnies, which are now dry. We can pop these on here like so. So I think I'm going to use a little bit of red line tape because I'm going from the aperture piece over onto the glitter card where I've got the trellis and back onto the vellum. I'm just going to use a little bit of red line tape because I know that's going to do the job nicely for me and keep those in place. So I'm going to put a bit on the back of that one. Just trim that with my scissors. And then the same on this one. Like so. And then we can pop those in position. So I'm going to do the taller one first. And I like the fact that the way that I've chosen to position these, they're actually looking at each other, the two little bunnies. So this one's going to go sort of a little bit lower down, and he's going to go further up, like so. And then again, I'm just going to burnish that on the back of there, take the liner off, and then we can position him. Like little friends, they look as if they're having a nice little chat to each other there. Bring that one a little bit lower down and stick that one down. And then I had a rummage through all my little embellishment pieces, and I knew I'd got some of these somewhere. I felt that it needed a bow, but I didn't want to go too elaborate. My first thought was to go with some gold twine, but my gold twine was very yellow compared to this, and I didn't like the match. It didn't match very well, so it was like, where do I go next? I could have done a little die cut bow. I have got some bow dies, but I knew I'd got these little pieces in my stash, and it's like a little tiny pearl, almost like an embellishment there. And again, then that, you know, first of all, I thought we'll pop it at the top there like so. So shall we go up at the top like so? But then I ended up with it here, just to offset these little bunny rabbits here. And I've got my glue gun on, and I just want the tiniest little piece on the back of here. I don't need a lot of it, but it's the best thing really to actually pop this. If you don't have the hot glue, you could use a glue dot or something like that. And then I'm just going to bring this in so that it's partly overlapping the vellum and partly overlapping that grid in the back there. And then, of course, you know me well now, no card's complete without a little bit of bling. And again, I had a look, I wanted the gold and I couldn't find the right shade of gold. So I was like, right, let's have a look what else we've got. So I decided to stay with the neutral colours and reach for my Nouveau drops this time. And these are the ivory seashell, which are like a pearl ivory neutral tone. So I'm just going to get a little bit of scrap card here. Just make sure that these are working. I very rarely go straight onto my card blank. Sometimes they decide to dry in there like it has done. So I'm just going to take the pin and just open up that nozzle there. Make sure that they're going to behave. Had these in my stash a very long time. So again, let's see if that's going to play. If not, I'll show you the one that I've already decorated. Again, it's decided now that it doesn't want to play. Right, let me just try something a wee bit wider than the pin and see if that works. So I'll just go in with my pick there. And we'll try again, see if that's going to help. Do you know, I knew this would happen. I had to clean it yesterday because I hadn't used them for such a long time. So let's show you that process then. Seeing as they're not playing, what I tend to do is just take the little cap out of the top carefully. I'm going to grab a little wipe here just so that I try not to get too messy. And then what I'm going to do is just clear out some of this inside here. Sometimes it gets a bit gloopy, I find, and that's why it doesn't come through the nozzle. So just a little bit of TLC. Take all this out of the nozzle here. Because what's in the bottle is fine. It's just, it gets a bit gloopy sometimes in this bit here. And you'll find that you might pull out a piece that has actually kind of set in the bottom. So it's a good opportunity if you've got these in your stash and you find that they are a bit sticky, to just give them a really good clean out. And then I'm going to take my pin again, which I'm just going to borrow out of my other glue bottle, and I'm going to make sure that from the top here I can see now that that pin's going to come all the way through. So there is still a little bit in the bottom there that I would prefer to get rid of. And just use something sort of sharp to dig it out. And make sure you've got rid of all that sort of gloopy bit out of the cap there. Again, we'll just make sure that that's going to go all the way through. And I'm also going to do it with the pick as well, because that's a little bit wider. And make sure that we can get both ways. Get rid of anything that's sort of clogged up in the nozzle. And then I'm hoping that this is going to work. If it doesn't, as I say, I'll show you the one that I've already done. So again, just general housekeeping. Make sure that everything in there is nice and clear. So I'm just going to take that gloopy bit out of the... and I think part of this is, as a lot of you know, that I work in my craft room. So I have a lot of fluctuation in temperatures. And I think that does tend to affect things like this. Right, so we'll go for it. We'll try again. And if it doesn't work, I'll have to bring in the one that I did before. So again, let's have a little look and see whether we're still going to play. It doesn't look as if it wants to play now. Yeah, there's some severe blockage somewhere in the nozzle, I think. So I did try my best. And I did get it working when I did the prep for this. So, and I'm very, very stubborn. I'm a Taurian and stubborn by nature, and I don't like things to win, but I am conscious that I am on video and I don't want to... there we go, look, patience is a virtue. Right, so all I want to do now then is make sure that this is going to come out nicely to create those little... There we go. See, quite proud, quite pleased with my little self now. So again, I'm just going to grab that white that I had, make sure we're good to go. And then I'm going to build these into, I'm going to come across from this corner. So I'm going to start up here in the top and put 3 of them. And the beauty of these is you can go whatever size you want. So I'm going to do quite a large one, then a medium sized one, and then a small one. And then I'm going to come down onto the vellum so that I'm coming at this angle here. And I'm going to pop 3 on the vellum, like so. And these should self-level, but I'll show you a little trick to help. And then I'm just going to bring 2 little ones down there at the bottom. So we've got that bringing your eye down that diagonal. And again, I always wipe these when I put them away, but as I say, I think it's the fact that I work in my conservatory that affects some of the products that have, you know, a liquid base. So we'll get rid of that bit before I put my hand in it. I'll put the pin back in my glue before I lose it. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to use this and just give it a tap underneath where those are, and you'll find that you get that lovely little dome shape now. And then you will leave it to dry. I usually leave them quite a while. I normally walk away at this point and leave them to dry, otherwise I end up putting my fingers in them. So I swap it over for the one that I'd already done. And you can see how these just blend in nicely with that neutral theme. And I just wanted the little hint of gold in there just to complement that glitter card. So we've got our lovely Easter blessing there. We've got our sentiment inside. And that is my card for today. So this is in preparation for Easter. The following week, I will be doing another Easter project, and this is something that some of you may be familiar with because I'm going to remake the Easter basket, which I have done previously, but I wanted it on my channel, so that will go alongside. It is a slightly different colour scheme, but the idea, you know, that you can create a card and a gift if you're wanting to do that for Easter. So that brings me to the end of the tutorial today. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel yet, I really would appreciate it. I know there's been a massive amount of support out there. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed the video. Click that little notification bell if you want to be notified next time I upload. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody for the support. And I will be back with you guys very soon. Bye bye now.